everyone, I'm Ben Fogle, television presenter, explorer, wildlife enthusiast, and United Nations patron of the wilderness. Welcome back to the second episode of the Be the Change in 2022 podcast, a series of conversations organised by One Carbon World in collaboration with the United Nations Climate Neutral Now initiative. COP27 is now bringing parties together to accelerate action towards the goals of the Paris Agreement and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Egypt's COP27 presidency vision is to move from negotiations and planning to implementation. Aligned with this vision, One Carbon World aimed to promote immediate action and strengthen its joint agenda with the UN in the mitigation of the effects of climate change through swift, voluntary action. The main goal of this podcast is to present to you some inspirational stories and innovative solutions, reach more individuals and organizations worldwide, and encourage them to commit to do everything in their power and to do it now. This second episode is called Sport, Pushing Boundaries in Sustainability for the Next Generations. We all know that every year sport brings millions of us together globally, as we're now witnessing the preparations for the World Cup in Qatar. Together, we will learn more about how sports and top sporting events are creating a blueprint for tomorrow's future. Before we invite our first guests, we want to share a message from Miguel Naranjo, Programme Officer of the United Nations Climate Neutral Now initiative team in Bonn, who will be highlighting the importance of these events and how they can be a key to sustainability in our daily lives.
Hello, my name is Miguel Naranjo, and I am Program Officer with the UNFCCC Secretariat based in Bonn, Germany. I want to thank you for participating in this session today on the role of sports in the response to climate change, and One Carbon World for organizing it. I don't need to remind you most surely that the response to climate change is now very urgent, and every day that passes makes it even more pressing. Sports have an enormous capacity to raise awareness about issues. The reach that the sports events and sports organizations, sporting individuals themselves have is enormous. It is at this point in time necessary that this influence, that this capacity for outreach are used to raise awareness about the need for climate action and what climate action practically means. What does it mean in practice for individuals and organizations to contribute to the solution? I'm very happy to see this session today because this is an opportunity to continue this discussion, to continue raising awareness, to share best practices of efforts that are already being done, of success stories that have already happened. We have an initiative at the UNFCCC that is called Sports for Climate Action. For those of you who are not familiar, you're welcome to visit our website to learn more about it. But this is a sectoral initiative that aims to provide tools and space for coordination between players of all types in the sports sector to precisely respond more effectively, faster to the climate change challenge. As you probably know by now, the reason why we need to respond to climate change is not just because it's the right thing to do for nature and for society in general. It's also the right thing to do for sports. Climate change is going to impact your sport, is going to impact your business, is going to impact your activities directly. Therefore, it's not just the right thing to do, it's also necessary to ensure the continuity of your work, the continuity of your activities. So this should be an extra encouragement to put more effort into supporting communications around climate change and sustainability in general as part of your work, to make it an integral element of the work that you do. Sustainability, response to climate change should not be something else that you have to do, something else that you have to think about or worry about when you are doing your work. It has to be an integral part of that work. The future of your business, of your activity, of your sport depends on it, no less. So again, I want to thank you very much for being involved in this conversation, for the efforts that you're probably already implementing, and thanking One Carbon World for organizing the discussion. I can only encourage you to continue to work on this, to do more if you can, as the response to climate change becomes every day more urgent. Thank you for your efforts, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Miguel, for that inspiring message. Now, it gives me great pleasure to invite our very first guest, who'll be speaking about the fantastic opportunities that sporting events have to demonstrate voluntary climate action and lead by example. Now, Ellen Jones is Head of Sustainability of Formula One. Of course, Formula One needs no introductions. But perhaps some of you don't know that Formula One has recently launched its first ever sustainability strategy, with an ambitious target to be a net zero carbon sport by 2030. Recognizing the critical role that all organizations must play in tackling this global issue, leveraging the immense talent, passion, and drive for innovation held by all members of the Formula One community, its team is already making a significant positive impact on the environment and communities in which they operate. So, welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Ellen, let's get straight into it. Tell us a little bit about what Formula One's approach is to sustainability.
Yes. Well, when you think about Formula One, you think about teamwork, you think about speed, innovation. These are all key principles which we need to apply in order to achieve our sustainability aims. And how that translates into our approach to sustainability is two key ways. The first is what is our responsibility, and the second is what is our opportunity. So when you talk about responsibility, you're talking about our own operations. How does Formula One look at how we operate to change to ensure we can meet our net zero goal? The second is opportunity. From an opportunity perspective, there are two key areas. The first is innovation. And when you look at Formula One, the engineers, the history of hybrid engines, safety, the next frontier, so to speak, is sustainable fuels. So Formula One cars will be fueled by a sustainable fuel in 2026. This is a key platform for us to inspire the world on alternate technologies and fuels to help lower our carbon footprint. But the second side is fans. As you mentioned, sport has this amazing way to promote action, emotion, exactly what we need in the climate crisis. In the one perspective, it shows, well, how can we inspire as we meet our net zero goal and bring our fans and others along with the journey for us so they can also meet their own net zero goals?
2030 is an ambitious target. As you know, Ellen, the spirit of this year's COP is to move from commitment to actual implementation.
Yeah.
So since the launch of Formula One sustainability strategy in 2019, what has actually been delivered?
So in 2019, we launched our strategy and it had three key areas. The first is net zero carbon by 2030, but the second two areas are how do we improve our environmental and social impact? So when we look at our strategy as a whole, there are some steps that make complete sense to do in our control. Things like power our offices by renewable energy. Done. Things like increasing recycling and understanding of plastic and the circular economy within our own offices. Also done. But there's so much more to do. And in particular, where Formula One has a global footprint is in our events. So in terms of our events, the race weekends that people go to and enjoy, thousands of people coming in every day around the world. And what we have done is first, we've issued guidance to our race promoters. So our race promoters are the organizations that host our events in each of the countries. The second is we've issued reporting because we need to know how they are delivering against that guidance for sustainability and how we can support them on that journey. So what that means for you is when a fan comes to an event, there's a number of changes that they are seeing today in our events this season, and our events to come, from increasing use of reusable cups, increasing use of alternative energies like HVO and biofuels, which you can't see, but very important for our carbon footprint. But equally, how we engage with fans, things like having water refill stations so that fans can bring their reusable water bottle, things like encouraging lower carbon forms of transit, be it from bike to carpooling to using public transit. So those are the changes that you see in the Formula One races now, and you will continue to see as we mature and deliver against those goals.
Great to hear about all of these positive steps you've already made. Obviously, you have these ambitious targets to net zero by 2030. So what does the path from here to there look like?
So we've made some key steps. The main one when you look at the materiality of our footprint, is that 2/3 of our footprint is based on travel and logistics. So when you look at travel and logistics, there are three key pillars. Like everyone, we need to get from A to B. So it is, what distance are you traveling? What amount are you carrying? And what mode are you taking? Because when we use all three, air, sea, land, Formula One needs to get around the world. And when we look at that, it says those are the key pillars that we will be working on every day to make those changes. The first is remote broadcast. That's already been delivered. What that means is the Formula One event used to travel. Everyone would travel around the world to host an event. But now actually we have services that are completed at home, which typically would have traveled. However, we're still getting the same event quality. And what we will be doing as we go through 2030 is looking exactly at that. How do we look at our calendar to ensure that we're traveling efficiently? How do we ensure that for every bit of kit that goes, it is lightweighted? We have looked at, does it need to go in the first place? We have looked at, can it be redundant and be put in a regional hub? And then the third is, what mode does it travel on? So when you talk about mode, moving to sea freight is a much lower carbon way to travel as opposed to air freight. So part of my job is to make sure that everyone in Formula One understands what their role is in terms of delivering net zero by 2030. And it will be a huge effort. It will be an effort not only from our own travel and logistics teams, but also our race promoters, our partners, our F1 teams. And it's a very exciting journey to be on.
Ellen, thank you very much. It sounds like Formula One faced some of the logistical problems I have as an international TV journalist. I'm not sure that sea freight is going to work at this stage, but I look forward to seeing what sort of developments you can come up with. Thank you very much for your time, your commitment, and congratulations on all the positive steps you are making. We'll now listen to some inspirational organizations, and we will be back in a minute.
Doesn't matter where you live. You can live on the coast, you can live in the middle of a continent. But your life is absolutely dependent on the work of other species. The problem is that we have been abusing our natural world so much that nature cannot keep up with us. We are destroying our only home. We are unplugging our life support system for short-term gain. But the world is moving, and there is huge momentum. There is no going back.
We have a real opportunity to change attitudes and to help actually to create solutions. We really felt that there was an opportunity to help promote the acceleration to clean energy and champion a cleaner world powered by nature.
At SailGP, we're climate positive, which means you have more impact on the world than your footprint. We race for the future for our kids, for our families, for the cities we all live in and race at, and for our oceans.
I have hope because I have seen the ability of the ocean to recover, to bounce back, if we just give it space. The sailing community have a huge role to play because sports have the ability to reach more people than anything else on the planet. We all depend on each other's behavior. There is no me alone anymore. The best way for people to understand what we're doing to the planet is to see it. And the best way for people to act is to fall in love again with nature. So sailors, please take as many people as possible into the ocean. Take people with you. That's one of the longest term contributions that you can make.
Cycling is a pathway to ensuring a safe and sustainable world, both now and in the future. Cycling can address some of the greatest threats to humanity: climate change, air pollution, and premature death from inactivity.
Hundreds of millions of bike trips, including e-cargo bikes delivering goods, can reduce the use of polluting vehicles and curb air pollution for the benefit of people and the environment.
Cycling for everyday trips can play a big part in helping people maintain recommended levels of physical activity, with significant health benefits for hearts, bodies, and minds. 5 million deaths per year can be saved if the global population is more active.
The sport of cycling must also take action to reduce its negative environmental impact, both in events and in day-to-day operations. We need to start measuring our emissions, take action to lower them, and continually be on the path towards carbon neutrality. The sport of cycling has an opportunity as well as a responsibility to actively contribute to the global sustainability agenda, keeping in line with the Olympic movement's vision of building a better world through sport.
There are many ways to build a culture of sustainability in cycling through communication and engagement. Worldwide, people are recognizing the need and opportunity to diversify our sport by ensuring that diversity in cycling is increased, respected, and celebrated.
By taking action, each of us in the cycling world can improve and contribute to the state of public health, the preservation of natural resources, the promotion of social justice, and the well-being of the society.
Let's build the cycling of tomorrow.
Like SailGP and UCI, many other inspirational organizations are changing the way we understand sport, sporting events, and sustainability. At One Carbon World, we are experts at measuring emissions from large events. We have been officially selected by the Egyptian government to measure the emissions of COP27 and write the official sustainability report for the conference. Join us on our journey to Sharm el-Sheikh.
Now, it gives me great pleasure to move on to our second guest. I'd like to welcome Alexandra Rickham. Alexandra really does have a pretty impressive profile. She is a double Paralympic sailing bronze medalist and 5 times world champion, as well as head of sustainability at World Sailing. Wow. World Sailing is the world governing body for the sport of sailing, officially recognized by the International Olympic Committee. World Sailing takes sustainability incredibly seriously and is considered a leading international federation in promoting climate voluntary action at every stage of the sport. We really are excited to learn more about these initiatives. So welcome, Alexandra. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Alexandra, tell us a little bit about what sailing as a sport is doing to play its part in achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the objectives of the Paris Agreement.
Sure. So World Sailing, we published our Sustainability Agenda 2030 4 years ago now. And it's a hugely comprehensive strategy. It's got 56 objectives across 6 delivery areas, covers everything from, the decarbonization through to our, diversity and inclusion goals as well. And as an organization, it's incredibly important to us, as a global organization and the governance organization, that we're able to bring sustainability into everything that our member nations and authorities do. And in terms of how it helps us deliver for Paris, we're looking at, as I said, decarbonization. So we're looking at how do we decarbonize our support fleets. So, we've already seen the electric vehicle market is taking off, but on water, we have loads of vehicles. So we need to make sure that those are also part of that energy transition. And then for the UN SDGs, we've aligned our agenda to the UN SDGs. So actually, we are covering about 12 SDGs, 12 of the 17, which is pretty difficult, but actually something we've decided to push ourselves really hard. And then we've also, because we're, underneath the IOC as a recognized federation, we've also aligned that with the IOC's sustainability agenda. So we make sure that all of our events are delivering, that we're also looking at, where does our equipment come from? What's the impact of that? How can we further develop that? So it's pretty comprehensive, but it means that actually we get a really good 360 view of our sport and are able to try and make a difference.
I'm wondering, Alexandra, as an international federation, what does sustainability mean in different parts of the world to the sailing community?
Well, one of our core responsibilities is to our member national authorities, so our membership, so these are all the national governing bodies around the world. And the reality is that those members are also at the forefront of climate, of the impacts of climate change. So these tend to be climate communities. It naturally, sailing is by the ocean, sometimes by lakes, depends, but by bodies of water. And it means that we have these local coastal communities that are, integral to our sport. And because of that, we're seeing the intersection of how we develop as a sport, both from a social perspective and, and from to sustain our sport in terms of growth. We're seeing that intersection with the issues that are affected by climate change. And so it's really important that we're able to holistically look at sustainability. And it's more than corporate responsibility, essentially. It also means that we have to advocate really for those communities that are a part of our member national authorities and for coastal people and how they're being impacted. So it's an exciting time for us, though, because actually from a development perspective, it means that we're able to have deeper conversations with some of the authorities that maybe we didn't previously engage with us, as much as we do now.
Alexandra, you're here today really with two hats. I'm interested to hear about your athlete's hat. How important is an athlete like yourself's voice when it comes to sustainability?
It's hugely important, and I'm a former athlete, so I'm retired now, but the reality is that, we've seen this change in the world. The athlete voice and the athlete activist has become incredibly important. It's an intrinsic part of sports at the moment. And at World Sailing, we are encouraging our athletes because actually they're the ones who activate change. When we want something changed, actually, they're like the biggest voice for us. They're able to use their platforms. They can engage our wider community. They can engage more people into our sport, when they want to talk about issues that affect them. And a load of our athletes are actually actively campaigning against, single plastic use, against, just general climate action, decarbonization, and going back to the previous question, like a lot of those athletes also come from nations and come from areas and communities that are directly impacted by climate change at the moment, in this real time, as opposed to what we're, and it's going to get worse in effect unless we do something now. And they recognize that. And we're incredibly proud of the fact that they have such big voices and are real advocates for the sea.
Alexandra, thank you so much. Obviously, bringing sustainability at the top of the agenda of sport and sporting events is definitely something that we can all work towards and be very proud of, as you should be. Thank you for your time. You really have been inspiring. Thanks for championing sustainability. Now, before we move on to our next guest, we've got some more inspirational organisations and their work towards climate voluntary action, and we'll be back in a minute.
Every year, sport brings millions of us together globally. Sporting organizations are now leading the way and pushing boundaries for the next generations. Formula One has recently launched its first ever sustainability strategy, recognizing the critical role that all organizations must play in tackling this global issue. Net zero carbon by 2030. Ultra efficient. Reducing waste. Recycling more. Renewably power offices. From 2026, 100% sustainable fuels. Game-changing innovation. Net zero carbon by 2030. Sports and top sporting events are creating a blueprint for tomorrow's future. You can start your journey with us today. Learn more at onecarbonworld.com.
We're now heading towards the end of this fascinating episode, which I have to say I am really enjoying. We now have Ben Barrett joining us. Ben is sustainability consultant at the UCI, the world governing body of cycling, recognised by the International Olympic Committee and founded in Paris over 122 years ago. Cycling indeed represents one of the planet's great hopes to shift society towards lower or zero carbon methods of transport and address some of the greatest threats to humanity, including climate change and, of course, air pollution. Ben will tell us a little bit more about this in a second, but first of all, thank you, Ben, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Ben, let's start with some really interesting questions that we have for you. Why do you think it's important for UCI to measure its impact and publicly report on them?
Well, we're still quite, early on in our journey, but for credibility, we need to communicate transparently on what our impacts are and the steps we're taking to reduce them. Third-party verification, achieving recognised standards for reporting and climate action is really important to demonstrate our performance against the UCI's target to reduce our organisational emissions by 50% by 2030. The UN's Race to Zero recently released a pivot point report, which highlighted that voluntary commitments aligned with existing frameworks are a real driver for transition in the wider economy. Ambition informs action and action informs ambition. So it's really the UCI's role and our goal to lead by example, provide a template, and most importantly, inspire organizations in the cycling family, national federations, teams, event organizers to also join us on this journey.
Ben, I think a lot of people will already assume cycling is a very green sport, a green method of transport. What does it take for sports like cycling to be on the net zero track? And what's the UCI doing?
Well, it starts with measurement. We need to be, as a sport, we need to be collecting data, establishing baselines, benchmarking and really understanding where our significant impacts are. We need to measure our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions and set science-based targets to reduce them. In order to do that, all organizations have a role to play to really with the goal of supporting the climate neutrality for our sport in the future. The UCI identified that making carbon footprinting accessible to our stakeholders will be vital to this. So that's why we've been developing a carbon calculator to be launched in 2023. Carbon footprinting is the best tool we have to understand what our climate impact is. And, cycling is a sport built on data, innovation and improving performance. We need to use that same approach to address our environmental impacts. But another priority for the UCI is also to raise awareness and educate the cycling world on the climate emergency and also what we can do to reduce the sport's impacts. Our role as the governing body is to amplify best practice and make sure that everybody in the sport is moving in the right direction. We've already seen some really positive results from the UCI sustainability guidelines at the Tour of Scandinavia, at the Val di Sole World Cup, Mountain Bike World Cup, and also the Road World Championships in Wollongong. We really think as well that the UCI cannot transform the sport by itself. But that's why we're also launching the UCI Climate Action Charter, which allows us an opportunity for organizations operating in the sport to make a public commitment and solidarity with the UCI to reduce the sport's environmental impacts, advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and most importantly, advocate for more everyday cycling. As a United Cycling family, we're going to have to work together. We're going to have to collaborate, share insights, and most importantly, overcome the shared challenges that we face.
There's obviously many different faces to cycling, Ben. I'm wondering what pro cycling does and can do to encourage the general public, people like me, to love cycling and maybe influence more sustainable mobility choices.
Well, look, global efforts to reduce carbon emissions by 2030 in line with the 1.5 degree scenario cannot be achieved without a systematic increase in cycling. Transformative changes are required in the transport sector, and the bicycle has a vital role to play in making those deep and rapid emissions reductions possible. As a sport, we've got an added layer of responsibility because we're also a mode of low carbon transportation. Professional cycling is a platform to engage and inspire many people worldwide to choose more sustainable behaviors. But first, the sport has to achieve credible recognition for addressing its considerable negative environmental impacts. This is vital and crucial for building trust with local communities and the wider public, and that's important in order to leverage cycling events to promote the bicycle and more bicycle use in everyday society.
Ben, thank you very much for those inspiring thoughts. I'm off for a cycle.
Awesome. See you out there.
It now gives me great pleasure to welcome our final guest in this episode, Fiona Morgan. Fiona is SailGP's Global Director of Purpose and Impact. SailGP's ambition is to be the world's most sustainable and purpose-driven global sports and entertainment platform. Their goal is to create an inclusive league and change the sport by providing opportunities and pathways to inspire and accelerate fundamental change. SailGP is therefore a pioneer in voluntary climate action and is changing the way we understand sailing in particular, and sports events and sustainability in general. Very warm welcome to you, Fiona. I thought I'd begin by asking you, what exactly is Impact League and where did this idea come from?
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here talking about pushing boundaries in sport and sustainability, which is really important to us at SailGP. We set a vision early on at SailGP to be the most purpose-driven and sustainable sport in the world. And when you set that, you think, how do you need to operate to hit that ambition and that vision? And we're a sport, we're a league, we have athletes, and so we wanted to redefine performance. And actually, we want a podium for the planet. We want our athletes to be judged on how sustainable they are, socially and environmentally. And so we were the first sport ever, and the first sport at the moment doing this. So we actually have a league called the Impact League, and there's money involved and a trophy, and it's celebrating how sustainable our teams are at every event. The New Zealand team won the first season, and the reason why people ask me is it's in the DNA from day one. They set up with a great charity partner called Live Ocean, and that's what they wanted to do, is to champion a world in a live ocean. And so they were very sustainability minded. So when we launched the Impact League, they totally got it. And other teams were further behind the journey, but actually we've had some new event winners. The Danish team have been winning. We've had the Swiss team, which is a new team into the league, win. The Canadian team, again, win. So it just shows if you really act sustainably, you can still win the Impact League. And it's been an amazing concept. And I think it's something we want other sports to do and other businesses, because it's really behavioral science. It's about incentivizing behavior. It doesn't need to be sport, but with athletes, obviously, they're very competitive. So it works really well. And we've done some research to date, and nearly, I would say over 80% of athletes said they changed their mindset and behaviors because we've educated them and opened their eyes to how they should be operating differently.
And of course, you're recognised by the UN Climate Now initiative with a triple gold recognition. Congratulations. How did you achieve this?
It's brilliant, that, because you say to your athletes, we can win medals too. Sustainability can be medal winning as well as obviously sport. So we did that by working with obviously our consultants and our great team early on to really take full responsibility of all of our scopes. And we wanted to make sure we had that, that footprint and understand what our impact on the world was. And, we do take it very seriously, scope 1, 2, and 3. And so we've been measured. We did a lot of work on our measurement, on our reduction, and then obviously offsetting. And we know what we need to do. We set a target of 55%, and that's going to be hard to achieve because we're a growing sport. But it's really important that we aligned with the UN Sport for Climate Action Framework, Race to Zero, and actually go faster in what we want to do. So we've been very ambitious again in the way we're looking at it, but very transparent. And obviously with every sport, our issue is scope 3, but that's something we're really looking at this season onwards. A challenge, but I think what you need to do is focus on what you can control first. So we've been focusing on how we're powering our events, what fuel and what's on the water, and looking at making significant reductions in that. So we've made huge reductions, I'd say, even in season 2. So temporary power at over half our events with temporary power working with the Greco. So that's solar or shore power or some biofuel generators. And then we've been looking on the water. We've reduced. If you don't know sailing, we have the F50s, which are powered by the wind, the sun, but then we have a lot of other boats, the infrastructure around that F50, the media boats, the hospitality boats, the broadcast boats, and they're petrol boats. So obviously that's what we're trying to shift. And it's a bit like the automotive industry 10, 15 years ago. So what we've done is look to optimize, take boats off the water. We have remote umpires, which people can't believe. Our umpires are not traveling, remote broadcast operations. And we're also just making people be more mindful when they're driving the boats. And we've reduced the 10% of the fuel and the carbon emissions of the boats on the water around our event. And that's huge for us. So I think what we've been doing is focusing on areas we can control and then looking at the bigger problems that the whole sector has, working with people like the UN Sport for Climate Action Framework and other signatories.
Fiona, yours really is a great example for many other sporting organisations. Can you give us some advice for anyone else on how they can get started on their own journey? Any words of wisdom?
Just do it. You have to do it. I think sport as a sector, no planet, no sport. And I do think sometimes I have conversations with people and they still think sport will be okay and we don't have to change and legislation and, carbon targets won't hit us. But you have to know what your footprint is. And it's actually not as scary as you think. You got to start somewhere and work with other sports, great consultants. I think the framework gives you buddies so we can all buddy up and help each other. I feel a responsibility to do that. And also what you need to do is really look at, what your opportunities are in sustainability, because actually I would say SailGP is a great example. We're growing way faster than we thought. And it's because of our sustainability, our purpose, our kind of reason for being beyond winning. So it's our impact league. And that's what commercial partners in the media are coming to talk to us about. So it's actually good for business and it's attracting staff. I do purpose inductions with all of our new starters. And I would say 90% of our staff come here because of purpose, because sailing is still a niche sport. SailGP is unknown. They could work in lots of places, but they come because we stand for something. So I would look at it as get your house in order, just do it. But also there's a huge opportunity when you lean in and get started.
Fiona, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. What you are doing is truly fantastic. Sadly, we've reached the end of this second episode of the Be the Change in 2022 podcast, but I'd like to thank all of you for listening and following this exciting conversation. We've just learned some fantastic examples on how sport and large sporting events can lead by example and help save the planet. This is also proof that we all have a role to play in helping mitigate the effects of climate change as much as possible. Please remember that you can follow these conversations on Spotify, but also on YouTube and on the One Carbon World website too. In our next episode, we'll be talking about green finance, a fascinating topic indeed. Hope to see you there. Thanks for joining us.